Welcome. I'm back to this place. Welcome to Airstrip 1 Oceana. Today on Secure Digital Life, Russ is, imagine right now, Russ is running down a torchlit corridor being chased by an anatomically correct mummy. So just put that in your head and keep it there forever. But today on SDL without Russ, Bill Ottman from Minds.com joins us, and I was really excited about this because Bill is a free speech and censorship expert, and I love to talk about that stuff because we always talk about technical things. We talk a little bit about philosophical things a little bit today because part of me always says, who cares? I sit in a chair all day, or I'm here spouting off about something to you on a camera, so what? But then I stop and think about all the terrible things that have happened in the past using privacy stuff against people. So, I mean, what if you made a political post against Napoleon back in July, and in November he wins the revolution and Snowball goes off to the gulag and all that stuff from, if you don't get all those references, it's okay. But a week later, you end up in the gulag too. So all this and more on this episode of Secure Digital Life.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So, Top can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man. Oof.
In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Be like you're looking out through the HAL dot, like,
oh,
hey, Dave.
It's like Sims, but with,
It would be like Sims.
Instead of AI, it's only.
Are you working on earning your Security Plus certification? Earn your certification faster and smarter with Cybex. Their courses and guides are compiled with CompTIA-approved content, providing you with the knowledge to be fully prepared on exam day. The Cybex Security Plus Gold course includes a partner to you pass guarantee. Users enjoy free course updates and repeats until you pass the Security Plus exam. Learn more and register for a free trial today at cybex.com/go/free trial. When you are ready to purchase, save 50% with code SECURITY50. Hurry, this offer ends December 31st. Accredited by Microsoft, Cisco, NetApp, IDLE, Oracle, and EC Council, QuickStart delivers high-impact, low-cost IT training through its cognitive learning platform in multiple domains. With QuickStart, you get an ever-growing catalog of courses, self-paced courses offered through a monthly subscription, virtual classrooms offered through an annual subscription, peer-to-peer learning, mentoring, official courses, certified instructors, hands-on labs, and more. For more information, visit www.quickstart.com. Use coupon code PAUL20 to get 20% off on all cybersecurity courses. Quick Start, creating world-class technologists. You and only you should join us for our webcast with Chronicle entitled Intelligence-Powered Malware Hunting. This webcast will be held December 5th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go to securityweekly.com/chronicle to register now. And if you're interested in quality over quantity and having meaningful conversations instead of just a badge scan, you should join us April 1st through 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort for InfoSec World 2019, where you can connect and network with like-minded individuals in search of actionable information. Use, and you really should, use the registration code OS19-SECWEEK, SECWEEK, for 15% off the main conference or even a world pass. InfoSec World is fun, so you should come and join us there. We'll all be there having a good time. So today, Bill Ottman from Minds.com. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
Hey, psyched to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a chance to talk to you because this is one of those things that, like, I go back and forth on this stuff so much in my head because when I think about it, one way is just like, yeah, who cares? And one way is like, oh, yeah, I do care, and maybe I shouldn't have said that, and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about first was what does privacy even mean? I mean, I know what it means to me, but I think it's just a really complex issue for most people, and social media has certainly impacted that very much. I mean, if you took a nude photo of yourself, and I know all of you out there wanting me to take a nude photo of myself, and it could happen. But what if you send it to a bunch of people? Okay, so you sent it, and you knew you did it, and you said, okay. But what if somebody steals it? Well, that's a very different feeling. So Bill, tell us what is privacy? How do you define it?
I think there's a distinction between privacy and security, and a lot of it has to do with consent, as you were sort of referring to. So, you want to know that in your private communications, ideally, if that everything is encrypted, everything's end-to-end encrypted. That's sort of the ideal. You don't know if someone on the other end is going to expose your privacy and steal your photo and share it, but in transit and on each end, you can have some degree of confidence that the NSA is not snooping or whatnot. So there's sort of some nuance there.
And social media has made that, to me, very transitory. So if you take a picture and I send it to a friend and I say, okay, this is my trusted friend and everything, and I don't care. And then my friend takes the picture and sends it to their trusted friend and they say, oh yeah, it's another person that we all know. But then all of a sudden that person and that person and that person suddenly ships it off and it ends up at the NSA or it's somebody bashing the president or it's whatever it is, and all that stuff sort of comes back around. I mean, you could conceivably lose your job over this kind of stuff, right? I mean that wouldn't be unheard of.
Absolutely. I think that you definitely want to use discretion when sharing things over the internet. To assume that something, if anyone ever says something's not hackable or that you should trust them, usually that's when the red flag should go up. So I don't exactly know what the solution is. I think that transparency, and this is sort of in our pre-call conversation, we were discussing how there's this paradox between transparency and privacy. And transparency can often bring more security because there's lots of eyeballs on the code, so you can inspect it and make sure there aren't backdoors. But then at the same time, some security researchers will argue that that can expose it to more people being able to find holes in the system. But I think, generally speaking, the elite security community thinks that open source encryption is better because it's just more scrutinized.
I completely agree. I mean, I've always said that security through obscurity is a stupid idea because somebody will compromise it someday. Somebody will sell it. Somebody will lose it. Somebody will get it stolen, and it's going to be gone. And so if your whole plan is that this is safe just because no one knows about it, it's a pretty naive plan, and especially in the modern age where everything's connected and it's very easy for people to get into things or to distribute things. And all of a sudden, once again, we get to that transitory point where it's like, I gave it to you, you get. So if it's open and we all know how it works, then if you still can't break it, that's a much safer scenario to me than saying, here's this mystery black box, trust it. It never fails, because then the next thing you know, it's the Clipper chip or something like that, and we find out, oh yeah, there was this built into it and that built into it, and that doesn't work the way we thought. Another piece of this then is how do we manage behavior without violating privacy? Because we always can get down to this what is too much kind of thing, and like you said, transparency is a different thing than pure privacy. But I mean, we all face these things all the time of the idea that we all want our privacy, but we don't want privacy for other people. It's very easy to go to people and say, well, what if there's strange smells coming from the apartment next door? Is it Jeffrey Dahmer, or is it just somebody who really, really, really likes to eat surströmming? And I mean, that's a scary idea to me, because if I see my neighbors, building something bad in the backyard, is it a violation for me to call them? And all this again applies then to the internet. So the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution says, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't misquote it, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, this thing was written in the 17th century, in the 18th century, and it's been debated and interpreted, and even though they wrote something like that, the Supreme Court talks about it, and so on and so on and so on. And even today, we see so many different interpretations of this. So once again, I guess I would ask you, how much is too much? When is it a point where we have to protect someone's privacy, and when is it a point where we say free for all?
Well, everyone more encryption makes everyone safer. So compromising encryption for security and surveillance for security, that whole argument, that makes everyone less safe because, we're compromising a common tool that everyone uses. People who work in the intelligence communities would then be using devices that have backdoors. So it doesn't make logical sense because we're all so interconnected to be compromising anybody's encryption. I think, look, reporting tools typically, generally, our philosophy on minds.com is as much transparency as possible with the software, as much encryption as possible, give the user as much control as possible, and then also give the community good reporting tools. If they see something out there that is super sketchy, it's reasonable to support that. But to surveil people in their private communications, that doesn't help anybody.
Well, where do you think that ends, though? I mean, is there any place you think that there's an ending to the responsibility of, I don't know, I mean, what if the person is a terrorist and they're using that tool to organize terrorist activities, and they've got this great, I mean, I know these tools exist, so it's purely a hypothetical question because there's plenty of tools we could use these things for. But I mean, is there a point where you think that ends?
Surveillance, yeah, you can't say that surveillance is inherently negative. Obviously, certain surveillance, to catch terrorists, could be valuable, but I don't think that we should be compromising the encryption that everybody uses. There's other tactics that can be used as opposed to compromising the tools that we all use.
I mean, I agree with that. I mean, like I said, I have these two hats, and so there's this hacker hat side of me that says everything should be a complete lockdown secret, and then there's this sort of law enforcement hat of me that says, yeah, but sometimes it sure would be nice to be able to open that door. And I completely agree with you that the minute you build back doors and hooks and ways for people to get in, even if it's, and people always say, oh, they have to do a warrant and all this stuff, but even if you do that, somebody will misuse it. I mean, it's always going to be the case, and nobody will trust it. So then the whole purpose of it ceases to be useful. I mean, I wouldn't use it, and I don't do anything. I'm the most boring person on earth. So I'm not doing anything, questionable, and I still wouldn't want to use, if somebody told me right now that Signal or whatever or Minds.com, yeah, it's really safe, except for if they have a warrant, then they come in and turn a key and they can read everything you've got. I would be like, yeah, I'm not using that anymore. I'm going to use something else. So I think, PGP sort of started that, the whole, the government was trying to pressure him into giving them access to it so they could build holes into it, and he just released it into the public domain or something like that. Was that how that worked, or do you remember?
Yeah, that's a beautiful story of unleashing open source software that protects everybody. That was a momentous event when PGP came out.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading about that because I had a couple of law enforcement people ask me about it, and they were like, are we going to, is this going to be the end of surveillance? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, you have to surveil it a different way. I mean, you can still take a camera and go watch the person and see what they're doing. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, the easier way to hack somebody is going to be to,
spearfish
take that
them.
Easier route. Fish them or compromising the encryption is it's actually shocking that high-level intelligence officials actually advocate that. It just shows that they don't really have much tech knowledge.
I think
many of them.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've seen that over and over again. I've been asked that in hearings. I've been asked that by high-level people saying, can we just build a skeleton key into this? And yeah, the truth is they don't really understand how it works, and they see it as being, they have to have access to it. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that if a person is building analog terrorist stuff, there's other ways to surveil that besides worrying about the encryption.
And it's interesting how privacy connects to free speech, because when you're in an environment, actually, Minds is currently not fully end-to-end encrypted. We're encrypted and we don't have access to people's conversations. We're working on making it end-to-end. So Signal is actually is better encrypted, and Wire and a couple of other apps than we are right now. We're working towards that. But the way that it affects your thought patterns when you're in an end-to-end encrypted environment versus an environment like on Facebook Messenger where
Right.
everything that you're putting in is being scanned and going through some algorithm, it really does change the way that you communicate. And I think that chilling effect is what is really alarming.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very strange thing. I mean, there's a lot of philosophical kind of ideas getting involved in this, and one of the ones, if you're listening there when we turned the show on, we were talking about this book. A long time ago, I read this book by Arthur C. Clarke, and if you don't know who Arthur C. Clarke is, Arthur C. Clarke was one of the most visionary writers ever. I mean, this guy was writing about the internet 40 years before we actually saw the internet come about. He was talking about these things, and with a guy named Stephen Baxter, he wrote a book called The Light of Other Days. And what this was about, and it's sci-fi stuff, but that's okay. The sci-fi stuff was about that they had this wormhole and they could actually see around the curvature of the universe, and so they could look into everything. So people could literally just see everything everybody was doing, and there was no privacy, and you could spy on somebody in the shower, you could spy on a politician when they weren't on the camera, you could go back and look at stuff from the past, you could just pick up any point of these photons in the universe and see it. And it's really a cool idea, and the whole real point of the book was just to take this sort of sci-fi idea and then apply it to this social commentary and talk about how it was a terrible thing, but it was a great thing at the same time, because as privacy went away, there was no need for signal. Everybody just assumed everybody knew what you were doing. There was no way to hide. There's no way. Minds.com is not going to help you because somebody's going to just read it off your screen. So there's no way that end-to-end encryption is going to protect you in any way. I really wish Kurt Vonnegut had written a book about this, because it really sounds like something he would have been into, probably a little before his time, or after his time, but I mean, just that was a very Kurt Vonnegut kind of thing of this, like you've lost all privacy, and then what that means to everybody.
Yeah, Black Mirror hits on some of these points.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that whole series, but
yes.
They have the idea that everyone's experience is filmed and you can go and access and rewatch. And I think that as technology evolves, we're definitely seeing that. Think about how much more of our lives is archived now, and we can go through and search it and find out. We're voluntarily exposing so much more information about ourselves on a day-to-day basis. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. We're live streaming, or we're recording a conversation.
Hello.
This wouldn't have been really thinkable a number of decades ago, just to be casually doing this on a
and not even that, not even we just doing it. It's being recorded and it's being put on the internet, which means it's going to persist. Mm-hmm. So anything we say on here, so we might want to shut up now, but anything we say on here, 20 years from now, people can still be hitting these sites on YouTube and going. I mean, and I tell students that all the time. I'm like, remember now, it's different. That everything you do, that you put on social media, that everything you put in a message, everything you record and put on YouTube, 20 years from now, when you want to run for the Supreme Court, somebody's going to go pull all those old videos, and they're going to go through them, and they're going to say everything you ever said. We're going to catalog, and we're going to say, I know you were only 18 when you did, or 15, or 14, or 12, or 9, or whatever when you recorded this, but we're still going to hold you accountable for it. And that's a very different thing than even my generation faced. Just with the advent of computers and then recording everything about you. So a lot of people were worried about that when it went to now it's in this database, and who can access it, and how do they get access to it. And we're facing a lot of those issues now. I mean, that's what Minds.com is trying to help with, is just the fact that people are starting to access everything, so we're sharing it, and it becomes really problematic.
Yeah, it's a totally different human experience now, having to consider the cause and effect of all of our actions, when we're carrying robots around in our pockets, which is still neither. It's ideally those robots, in our philosophy, will be open source so that you could theoretically inspect it and make sure that your personal robot isn't abusing you, because robots are what they are. They've been robots. I was reading this book Wonderland over the weekend by Stephen Johnson, and he shows this original robot from like the 1770s that was called the Writer, and it was a program to be able to write script of up to like 40 characters. And it could actually write things. There have been these robots that have existed for a really long time. Actually, the first use of the word computer was used in the 1600s and it was referring to a person who
Right.
carried out computations. It was actually like an occupation.
Well, that occupation persisted up into the 1960s.
Yeah.
So even in the 60s, there were still people that were called computers, and in fact, NASA used people that were called computers to do all the original moonshot calculations, because you had to do all the math. And the way they did it, because they just didn't have the kind of computing capacity we have today, they could send it down there to the computing shop, and the computers actually did all the statistics, all the numbers for them, which is like, yeah, that was a job and a profession that doesn't really exist anymore, because you can't compete with a spreadsheet to do that.
Yeah, and there's a weird relation, with all the talk of the singularity, and things are building up with sort of machines just being all-knowing, and there's a strange link between that concept of a super AI machine that is simulations embedded within each other, and then spirituality. Back in the day, that's what we thought was watching us.
Yeah.
And now we think that we're inside some sort of a cosmic supercomputer. So it's funny how those actually aren't that different.
Well, speaking of AI and machine intelligence, one of the big applications of machine intelligence is big data. And I've looked at a lot of these big data. I had a friend who worked on a big data app for a very large company that's we won't say their name, but they basically were tracking every single thing you do. I mean, every step you took in one of their stores, every product you picked up and put in your cart, when you picked it up, how long that was from when you came in the front door. And it wasn't so much that they were tracking, it was that then they were turning it over to these fuzzy and machine intelligence and all these kind of things. So that's a little bit scary, because the machine intelligence is starting to assess, how do I sell you better? How do I push this to you? But then when you start slipping over into the AI side of it, and you say, well, what if these things were smarter than that? And they start learning in new ways, and they start taking advantage of that, then privacy starts to evaporate really quick. I mean, if you turn law enforcement, like for instance, one of the things I always tell people is like, you could almost stop all crime right now. Put a drone everywhere with a camera on it, put a camera on every lamppost, every mailbox, every front door has a camera, all that's streaming into some central database. That means the minute somebody commits a crime, they've got you. They've got your picture. You're going to have to try to obscure who you are, and maybe they get around that because there's another camera over here. And I've seen that today. I mean, that's not even Black Mirror. That's real. I see it all the time now. They say, oh, here's a person who is shoplifting, and they're wearing a mask, and then there's a traffic camera shot of them coming out of the store that they got off of the lamppost, and they took their mask off when they walked out of the store, and they got them on a blurrier photo. Pretty soon there's going to be a camera in the car. There's going to be a camera in every car going by. There's a camera in every device that's out there that people are using, and somebody's filming. And we've seen that both good and bad of that. So we see that with when we see police officers doing bad things and people are filming it. I mean, all of a sudden, you've just got this gestalt of video coverage of almost everything in the world. And that doesn't totally bother me, because it seems to be leaning toward good. But then you start reading things like since we're talking about books, then you read 1984. And, if you haven't read 1984, you should. And I know that year came and went. But in 1984, everybody had to stand up in front of the television every morning. And stand in front of the television, which had a camera in it, and you had to do calisthenics, and they watched to see if you were doing them, and you had to smile when Fearless Leader came on and spoke, and you had to be positive, and if you weren't, then somebody came around and started asking questions. And that's the dark side of it. I mean, I think if you are interested in this topic, 1984 is an awfully good place to start reading about this sort of dystopian idea of what happens when our privacy is completely gone. It's a very scary transition. Now, Arthur C. Clarke, I think, got there in terms of this made us better in the long run, but it was that short run time that was pretty scary and awful, where people were abusing this stuff. I mean,
well, we are voluntarily doing it to a degree, and I think that as long as we can move into a more transparent, live streaming future, is if the individuals have as much a degree of control over still what they're sharing, that is going to cause us to move into that phase, which is sort of inevitable. I mean, just with how technology is advancing and more stuff is streaming all the time. So we know that we're going there to where, everything's just going to be streaming. Probably a satellite can just zoom in and like HD to any point. Who knows what what even the capabilities are of now. That, I mean, you can go to Google Earth and just zoom in anywhere.
Yeah.
So what the deeper, more classified programs, what kind of capabilities they have, we actually don't really know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, people go on. Why do people stream live on Instagram? I mean, so social, they want accountability to the world. People, there's fitness programs that when you're posting your results to your community every day, this motivates people to sort of be more inspired and be sort of be accountable to their friends and community. And so there's obviously all sorts of benefits to more transparency. It's just forcing, and maybe this is how our planet is evolving, so that we can learn more about ourselves and just have more information about everything that's going on, so that we can process it better. I don't, there might be some even biological reason.
I agree with that. I mean, I think it's a paradigm shift. I really do. I mean, we have this old world idea of what I do is protected and secret and whatever, and we have this modern idea where we put stuff out there, and we're subject to trolls, anonymous people. I mean, I've been working on a case where it's this anonymous person who just destroyed people's lives. Why? Now that we know the person, we don't really know why. It's just somebody with deep-seated anger, and they went after people, and they just literally destroyed these people's lives in very just insidious little ways. But the truth was that person was anonymous for a long time and thought they would remain anonymous, and they got outed and doxxed. And when that happened, then their world came crashing down too. But I think we have to learn how to deal with this stuff from a different perspective than just assuming let's just out everybody and dox everybody. I mean, we have to learn to ignore the trolls, and we have to figure out mechanisms to deal with that. And until we do, we aren't going to solve these problems.
Yeah, and the way that the big tech companies are handling this is sort of just go as fast as possible without having much regard for the way that we're doing this, and like I mentioned, the consent with the users and giving users control. I think that they're just being irresponsible, and that's why a new wave of more open, transparent social networks are emerging. And I think that we're going to, browsers as well, operating systems, all sort of more ethical, transparent tech is, I think, going to start being much more competitive, and it's going to have a lot of the same features that the tech elite have, but hopefully it'll just do it in a more honest way.
I mean, I think that the pushback on all this, of course, is protecting people from anonymity, because we see children. There was a case in Massachusetts not too long ago where this girl, basically, talked her boyfriend into killing himself, and that's been a big deal. And there was not really an anonymity issue in that, but it was the idea that it could have been. I mean, I could certainly have scrubbed myself up so that he couldn't have known who that was coming from, and we see those cases all the time. So in the short run, anyway, do you think that we need to find ways to prevent anonymity? I know you don't, but I mean, but how do we justify that then? I mean, when I go out, I'll have a parent call me as a PI and say my child's being bullied at school by we don't know who, and the school says they can't do anything because it's just this person called Big Daddy. I try not to be too risque on here. It's this person called Big Daddy, and Big Daddy is just continually harassing my daughter with obscene photos and all this stuff. Well, what do we do about that? I mean, because I know what they want. They say, out this person. We want their name, and we want them to be punished and pilloried. So what do you say?
I think that we have to look deeper at the psychology happening with troll mentality and cyberbullying, and we all know the saying, don't feed the trolls. And it really is true that by by fighting them in that way, just trying to either out them, dox them, or whatnot, that it sort of inflames the situation more. And as we mentioned, everything's becoming more transparent. So we're going to be having more people getting bullied on the internet and getting interactions from people, strange people, potentially malicious people. And I think that, yes, there's definitely certain reporting tools that we need to be developing so that people can stay safe. But at the same time, there has to be a whole new type of education going on so that, and this is sad, but like to a certain degree, we have to get used to this world that we've created where, deep fake videos are emerging where anyone can suddenly be put into like a pornographic film, anyone's face. I mean, this could probably be automated, and so that everybody's Facebook picture gets turned into a porn. Then you have a billion porn videos. Like, how are you gonna handle that other than a new type of education where people just sort of learn to deal with it in different ways?
And that's back to Arthur C. Clarke. I mean, that's what The Light of Other Days was about, was how do we get to that point? Because the whole book is just about the chaos that results when people can do those kind of things, and they can do that, and they eventually get to a point where people just don't worry about it. They, it's like, I mean, and that's how I ended up in that porno movie, but I mean, but the bottom line of that is we do have to learn, and I keep trying to make this sort of speech about it's not going to solve it. If we pass, I mean, China's trying to do this. I mean, so you see this in China right now. They're trying to pass this business where they got facial recognition cams everywhere. They've got a Black Mirror-esque kind of, thing going on where they've got these good citizen scores where they're basically saying, if you go online and praise the government, you get points in the positive direction. If you go online and criticize this policy, you get negative points. And if you get enough negative points, you can't use the bus or whatever. And I mean, that's right out of Black Mirror. I mean, I don't know if they got it from Black Mirror or Black Mirror got it from them, but the idea of it is right out of Black Mirror. And it's very scary to me to think that now we could be repressed like that. And that's the downside of loss of privacy. But the problem I keep telling people is, look, we can pass all kinds of crazy laws. We can pass a law saying that Facebook can't do this and Facebook can't do that or whatever. The problem is that trolls can move offshore. I can set up my server in Zimbabwe or wherever they don't care what I do, and run it from there, and I'm right back to that school bully bullying the kid, only now it's coming from a Tor browser going through 50 different routers across the world and coming back in from Argentina. And I just did a case like this where you saw this person shift from an open position where he might have been exposed to suddenly all the attacks are coming from Argentina and Venezuela and Mexico, and nobody knows what these are anymore because they were relying on this old idea that they could expose the identity. So I think we're going to get there with this sort of someday there won't be very much privacy and we'll learn to deal with it. But I think in the short run, the anonymity thing has to be protected. I mean, I think it's very dangerous to start allowing us to be doxxed.
It's so tempting to take that short-term quick fix and just take away anonymity and implement social credit scores, put the cameras everywhere. I mean, and that's going to happen all no matter what. But I think that the short-term temptation to just take shortcuts and avoid the higher education is, it's not going to work.
Well, I mean, we saw a lot of that after 9/11. We saw the government saying we got to roll back all these constitutional rights. We've got to roll back all this and that to protect ourselves from this so that we can just, break down the door and go busting in. And the problem with that is that, one of the first life lessons I learned about this was with the ACLU. So I was supporting the ACLU, and I still do. But I saw that the ACLU was defending the Ku Klux Klan. And I was absolutely shocked and dismayed that my money was being used to defend this white supremacist racist, horrible person. But I got this really good lesson out of that, because I actually called them. This was long time ago, but I called them and I said, I've given you money and this is outrageous that you're supporting this racist. And they were like, well, our belief is that we support everybody equally and we support their rights. And I think that's sort of what this anonymity thing is. We just have to learn to operate in that system and try to, try our best to not be like that. And I guess in the meantime, we just have to deal with it. I mean, would that sort of sum it up? I mean, we have to learn better ways to deal with these kind of things, because we're not going to stop it.
Yes, and I think that over time we're seeing with that ACLU philosophy that more speech is, sort of fights the bad speech.
Yeah.
That over time we are seeing a decline in racism. We are seeing a decline in hate crimes, and that has to do with education. There's more information out there. There's so much more reason to understand that's a brain dead philosophy. So yeah, I think that would transcend to other fields.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like I learned that when people troll you, if you actually just feel sorry for them because they're so pathetic, that kind of diffuses them. I mean, they can keep it up, but it's just kind of like, oh, aren't you a sad little person who is sitting there, commenting
Make your enemies
on
your friends. Making your enemies your friends. Approaching things with more lightheartedness and humor. I mean, I'm CEO of a social network. We have 1.5 million users. People make memes of me and troll me often. But I firsthand clearly see that when I don't let it bother me, I'm banning that they're setting traps for us to fall into. And when you take the bait, it opens up a whole new world of chaos that is just not worth it. And so there's actually this weird Zen feeling about just accepting. And I'm not saying that you should just accept everything. There's certain stuff that's actually not legal and is real harassment or inciting violence and whatnot. But with the stuff that is just tough to swallow, but sort of deserves to be there. There's a satisfying feeling about being able to coexist with that, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're seeing people start to learn to deal with that. We're seeing young people start to learn to deal with that because they've gotten, in some ways, just used to it. It became a non-issue because it's so prevalent.
Their friends embarrass them by taking a Snapchat of them at a party. It's like their own friends are doing this to them, and they're doing it to each other.
And maybe at some point, being anonymous becomes a kind of embarrassing sort of situation to be in. Is like you can only accost me anonymously, really. Like you don't have the nerve to put your name on this. So really, is that where we are? I mean, I get trolled, and nobody ever makes fun of me though. It's all just about how sexy I am and stuff like that. But. But, and that's how I ended up in that porn movie, right? But, well, Bill Ottman, I know we could talk about this for 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 years probably, and we would never resolve it. But I want to thank you for joining us on Secure Digital Life. Talk about Mind.com, which is a very cool site. If you haven't checked out
Minds, plural.
Minds, yeah, sorry. I thought I said it, but Minds.com. Please go there and check that out. There is a link in the show notes, so you can check out Minds.com and see another social media platform that you maybe haven't checked out, or at least millions of people have, but maybe you haven't, and you should. And thank you, Bill, for joining us on the show. And good night, Russ, wherever you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right. See you next time on Secure Digital Life.